If you believe in God as a matter of pure faith, personal experience, comfort, tradition, or simply because it gives your life meaning, and you're honest about not having philosophical or scientific evidence, this critique isn't about you. I actually respect that position. There's an intellectual honesty in saying, I believe without proof, or this is my faith, not my argument. This video is specifically about those who claim to have rational, logical, demonstrable proof of God's existence through philosophical arguments, and who seem unaware of the profound problems with that approach. It's about the cosmological arguers, the ontological proof makers, the fine-tuning apologists who present their cases as if they've logically cornered non-believers into accepting God's existence. If that's not you, you might still find the critique interesting, but know that I'm not challenging the validity of faith itself, only the claim that faith can be replaced or validated by philosophical argumentation. Okay, let's start with the girlfriend test. Imagine your son comes home and announces, "Dad, I have a girlfriend. She's coming over on Sunday." Sunday arrives. You ask where she is. He responds, "Let me show you the cosmological proof of my girlfriend's existence. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. My happiness has a cause. Therefore, my girlfriend exists." You'd be terrified for his mental health. You'd probably look into psychiatric care. Yet when it comes to God, supposedly an actual person, a conscious being, a creator with intentions and will, we're expected to accept the same kind of argument as legitimate proof. We're supposed to nod along as if words alone can establish the existence of a person. For me, this is a problem. The problem, if you will. There's a categorical mismatch between the type of evidence being offered and the type of claim being made. If God were like algae or fungi, a non-living living thing that only activates when contacts something else, maybe abstract arguments would work. If God were a geometric or mathematical reality that could be reached through calculations, perhaps equations would suffice. But if God is a person, an actual, conscious, intentional being, then the only evidence that can prove a person exists is the person themselves, not syllogisms, not cosmological arguments, not fine-tuning probabilities. You can't prove a person exists through philosophy. You show them the person.
Here is another issue. These arguments prove too much and too little simultaneously. Take any philosophical argument for God, the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, the moral argument, and I can use the exact same logical structure to prove that a God named Mata Mata exists on the planet Sora. What's Mata Mata? Where is Sora? Well, I just made that up. But how can you know I'm wrong? By what mechanism does the cosmological argument identify the Christian God specifically rather than Allah, Vishnu, a committee of gods, an unconscious generating principle, or my fabricated entity? Evidence must be able to lead to something specific and separate it from everything else. These arguments don't do that. They're logical Swiss Army knives that can be twisted to support whatever conclusion you already wanted. The cosmological argument concludes, therefore an uncaused cause exists. Fine. Why is that cause personal? Why is it singular? Why does it care about humans? Why did it inspire specifically the Bible and not the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita? Every one of those additional claims requires additional evidence, but instead of providing it, apologists just assert it and move on. The very fact that I am making this video, that we're arguing about God's existence, the very fact that you will probably reply in anger in the comments, the very fact that mortals like you and I are constructing elaborate philosophical cases for something that should be apparent, tells us several important things. First, it tells us that we're scared. There's a tugging roar from the unknown that we desperately want to unravel, but we can't, so we label it God. The name becomes our way to familiarize ourselves with the unknown so that we won't be swallowed by the fear of the abyss. It's like staring into the void. We need to give it a name, a personality, intentions. We need it to love us. It's more comforting than confronting the possibility of indifferent emptiness. It also reveals that we are on fragile ground. If something were truly apparent, we wouldn't need Baroque arguments to prove it. The sun's existence doesn't require the ontological argument. Your mother's existence doesn't need cosmological proof, I hope. The very existence of natural theology suggests absence. Think about it again. If your son presents a theophysical argument for the existence of his girlfriend, instead of just introducing you to her, you'd be worried. The elaborate verbal construction is a red flag that something is missing. Our minds have an extraordinary capacity to create realities and defend them with internally consistent arguments. We do this with conspiracy theories, political ideologies, and yes, theology. There are trillions of word combinations that can be arranged to defend any position. There are people on Twitter defending pedophiles with carefully constructed arguments. The existence of a sophisticated argument proves nothing about its correspondence to reality. Evidence for an actual being cannot be the most convincing arrangement of words. There is no other realm of human affairs where we accept this as proof. A is the proof of A. The existence of B as probabilistic evidence that A exists is not proof of A itself. Also, neurological hallucinations and paranormal experiences that can't be repeated are not proof of an ultimate reality. They're proof of themselves, proof that humans have the capacity for unusual experiences. Someone said to me, "I knew a man who saw a vision of an angel. That proves God exists." No, it proves humans can have visions, that's all. We have this cognitive bias where we can't transcend awe. Anything outside our immediate natural experience that we can't explain in detail becomes evidence for whatever we can't prove. It's a kind of intellectual desperation. I've had paranormal experiences myself. They don't mean anything beyond the fact that human consciousness is strange and we don't fully understand it. The last one that gets on my nerves is this idea that we should believe in God because there are some things we don't know. For me, this is perhaps the most infuriating rationale of all. There are some things we don't know? Then go know them. What you won't do is prop them up as evidence for your pre-existing conclusion. Let's say the unknown is a vast, dark vault that no human can fully explore. One day you venture in and meet a man who's incredibly kind to you. He smiles, takes care of you, shows you compassion. Do you then conclude that the unknown must contain kind, smiling men no matter what? That's exactly how people sound when they bring up the unknown as evidence for God. There are two problems here. First problem, the ignorance of a mortal cannot be evidence of an immortal. That's actually an insult to the immortal. Second problem, if the unknown is truly vast and inexhaustible, you can't develop a formula from your first encounter with it and summarize the whole unknown by that experience, because then it's not actually unknown anymore. It's known, but you don't know it, so the entire move is incoherent. Why do theists believe that their limited experiences must imply a God? Why couldn't those same experiences imply we're in an alien's test tube? Why must the conclusion always align conveniently with their pre-existing need for purpose, love, and cosmic explanation? This brings me to my deepest issue, which is that human beings seem incapable of recognizing that they are the ones creating the God, providing the evidence for the God, not God providing evidence of himself. Think about this carefully. If you genuinely believe you don't know much, that you're a finite mortal with limited knowledge, why would you think that the highest display of your intellectual capacity could provide evidence for something supposedly beyond your knowledge? Wouldn't it be more reasonable if that being reached out to you with undeniable evidence of its own existence? Humans have a documented capacity to build entire worlds in our minds. We create fantasies, characters with motivations and backstories, entire fictional universes. We do this with novels, films, games. Some experiments even suggest our mental constructions can influence our environment through expectation, perception, and projection. Shouldn't we be extremely cautious when constructing elaborate rationales for a God we haven't seen? Shouldn't we worry that we're creating that God in real time with our own arguments? An example is the claim that God exists outside time and space.
I hear this constantly, especially when apologists are backed into a corner by logical objections. But can't you see what's happening? You are making that argument on behalf of God. You are creating that character trait and imposing it on this being. Have you been outside time and space? Nope. Do you have direct testimony from God saying, "I exist outside time and space"? No. You're using the creative energies of your mind, which we know is capable of extraordinary fabrication, to place someone you haven't met in a place you haven't been, and then offering this construction as evidence. Isn't that profoundly dishonest? This is why I actually respect believers who embrace faith without pretending to have proof. They admit the leap. They're honest about the lack of demonstrable evidence. There's an intellectual integrity in saying, "I believe without proof," that's completely absent in natural theology. As Kierkegaard understood, faith is a leap precisely because you can't reason your way there. Pretending otherwise is self-deception. If God exists and wants to be known, philosophical arguments constructed by humans are the worst possible evidence. If God doesn't exist, philosophical arguments constructed by humans are exactly what we'd expect to find. Certainly, these philosophical arguments are the wrong tool for the job, and worse, that they might be evidence of humans creating what they claim to be discovering. The method is broken, the self-awareness is absent, and the intellectual dishonesty, whether intentional or not, undermines the very thing these arguments are meant to establish. If there is a God who wants a relationship with humans, that God would presumably understand the limitations of human cognition and the unreliability of philosophical argumentation. That God would provide evidence that matches the claim: personal, direct, undeniable. The fact that we're left with cosmological arguments and ontological proofs suggests we're doing exactly what we do in every other domain of life when we desperately want something to be true but lack evidence. We use words to construct a reality that makes us feel better. And there's nothing divine about that.